Welcome back. You're still on Hot Seat with me, Akintayo, and I'm still joined in the studios here in Addis by His Excellency President Festus Mogae and Dr. Kojo Busia. So, before we go back to the panel, we want to quickly let you know that the Coalition for Dialogue on Africa is collaborating with the African Land Policy Initiative (LPI) and the ECA APRM Support Unit to discuss how best to leverage state-society dialogue for improved natural resource governance. Let me go back to His Excellency, President Mogae. We're talking about transparency and local consultation, which really worked well in Botswana. In many parts of Africa, local farmers, herders, and gatherers only have insecure legal rights to the land they see as theirs. And most of them have no written documents to their land. And in Africa, much land is owned by the state, which can allocate it to outside investors with little or no opposition from the local people. Why is this so?
So I'm not quite clear when you say states, you mean the government. You know, Nigeria is a state, Botswana is a state. And it's just right and proper that we should have power over our land as a nation, not the government alone, because the government, as I say, they are the guardians of the property of the nation, which is the land, and therefore they have to manage it on behalf of the citizenry, and therefore promulgate laws or make statutes to govern the distribution, ownership, acquisition of the land, and that those laws and the practices that follow therefrom should be equitable, should be fair, and the leaders should not take advantage of the other citizens to the extent that they need to farm if they are farmers. We can't say that politicians or leaders must not farm, but to the extent that they need to farm, then they should do so on the basis and acquire the land and on the basis of what applies to everybody else.
Yeah, but people are always dissatisfied because even they found out that there was oil on their land or maybe uranium because of what the antecedents that they are seeing in other countries around Africa. They are always scared to give out this land because they survive on agriculture. Africans are known to be pastoralists.
No, that's unfortunate. If in fact the people who ought to be trusted come to be feared by those who are supposed to protect, then that's unfortunate, and it's a very serious indictment against us African leaders. If in fact the people actually fear us instead of trusting us, instead of even coming to us, even if we do wrong, to say, look, you are supposed to do this for us, and now you are doing it, acting against us. That's what I'm saying, that to that extent we are betraying the trust and confidence reposed on us by the electorate. They elected us because they believed we will work for their improvement, to fight poverty and disease, ignorance, and so on. Create employment. I mean, right now, one of the biggest challenges that we face as Africans is job creation. We have a lot of unemployment, even of not only of young people, but also including highly trained ones. And therefore, it is just right and proper that there has to be an authority to, like judges. Judges have the power to sentence somebody to death, but they should do so equitably in terms of what the law provides, in terms of the evidence that is available and the norms of the society. Some countries have the death penalty for murder, others don't. Now, if the judges become corrupt, again, it's a tragedy. If leaders in any field are corrupt, then of course they are betraying their mission. They are betraying their mission.
Okay. Dr. Busia, international law provides relatively effective protection for foreign investments, and international human rights law remains inaccessible and ineffective for some of these people. But when investors come with the best intentions, this means local groups are exposed to the risk of dispossession, and investors also get into legal disputes with them. There is always animosity between the investors and the people. What is a body like the APRM doing to make sure that people are sensitized to their rights and investors also know the right thing to do?
Well, I think the state plays a major role in mediating conflicts between the people who are custodians of these resources and the potential investors.
But Dr. Busia, in a situation where people no longer trust the state, and even the investors are trading blames with the state over the problems.
Yeah, it's all an exercise in confidence building and an exercise in sort of making sure that the people are aware of what is happening. And it goes back to the principle of information, the extent to which the citizens are informed, are consulted about whatever it is that the state would like to engage in vis-a-vis the potential investor. And that, I think, goes a long way in diffusing most of the tensions between investors and citizens who claim ownership. There is now a new concept in mineral resources called social licensing to mine. I think the state or the government requires the approval of the communities that will be affected, either environmentally or otherwise in terms of livelihood. That approval is actually something that the state will need to acquire from the communities who will be affected by investors. But it all goes back to the democratic process. If you have an open government system where citizens are consulted on every major decision, not just investments in natural resources, then ultimately you build that confidence. And then the state serves as a bridge between the investors and the citizens. I think with the transitions to democratic dispensations on the continent, elections being a much common method of electing governments rather than coming through the barrel of the gun, I think increasingly we are beginning to see more and more of such consultative mechanisms through parliaments and through other mechanisms of democratic process.
Well, there's also this problem where multinationals grab lots of land and they don't even do anything on it for several years, and the people are complaining that they should have left them on their farm to do something.
Well, I mean, as the president said, not all the decisions by the leaders are right. They are ultimately, there are some countries or leadership on the continent that are self-seeking and self-serving and have entered into agreements that were not well thought out. And some of these agreements have gone sour, ultimately. So some of these, are controversial. Some of these annexation of land are controversial. And I think this is what has brought about some of the delays in utilization of some of these huge tracts of land that have been acquired by multinationals.
Okay, it's excellent. Let's look at the issue of custody of the land.
Yes.
The custody of the land is for who? Because the custody is from the people, but for who again?
For the nation. In other words, the government is there to stop the individual powerful citizens monopolizing land to the detriment of the weaker members of society. They are supposed to play God, as it were, in the best sense of that way, but not to do the opposite. When we say, even our chiefs, when they held land in trust, it meant that the land is not theirs for them to monopolize. They have been given certain powers for them to govern the nation, to allocate and distribute the land among competing needs, among competing citizens, and they should do so fairly and equitably. That's what it means.
Yeah, well, His Excellency, let's even still talk about Southern Africa. We move from Botswana to South Africa. Even with what is happening in South Africa these days with the miners, at war with investors. We had, just like we heard from the executive secretary of the ECA, these companies are profiting a lot, even fourfold now. But the miners are asking for a little, even from the profit, a little more.
As the executive secretary said, at present that these mines are highly profitable. That's not always the case, but also sometimes, maybe not so now, there are fluctuations in prices. Under those circumstances, supposing then you then pay, you introduce a pay structure based on the price of the metal this year. What happens if the price doesn't apply for the next 5 to 10 years? As happened to copper in Zambia.
Okay, Dr. Busia, let's look at, still in Southern Africa, we want to look at Mozambique. I heard that there is a huge deposit of coal, but the government is still hesitant about extracting it or giving license to investors to go there. Could it be said that all this boils down to the fact that they're still scared of what happened in South Africa coming to haunt them again?
I'm not particularly familiar with the specifics of the Mozambican case, but I think a number of considerations as to why a government will not enter into negotiations for any kind of investment. My gut feeling is that it's probably due to environmental. There's this whole transition from coal to other renewable energy, green economy, and so on. So perhaps the government has advised itself that coal is probably not the best form of energy exploitation, and that may be looking at other alternative sources of energy. That will probably be my guess.
Well, you have something to say there,
Excellency? About Mozambique. No, I say I'm not aware that the government is hesitant to do so, because as far as I know, there is a huge coal development taking place by a Brazilian company. Now, it may be precisely because of the fact that already there is a large coal project that the government is hesitating and watching what is happening first. The environmental, ethical, and market opportunities impact of the current project before they license more or authorize more exploration or mining of coal, which is it's a reasonable precautionary position for any government to take, to be able to say, look, we have this huge resource and we are exploiting so much of it in so much of the land. Let us watch and see what environmental is going to have, how well we manage the negative impact it may be having on some of the citizens in the area where the mining is taking place, and look at the cost and benefits of what is happening and is likely to happen before you expand. Because nowadays, in any case, it is necessary that for any project, there has to be an environmental impact study. And if on that score it is marginal, or if the cost of the project in terms of displacing people appears to be on the high side, even though you have already made a decision, and you might be say, well, I'm not too sure whether this was the right decision, but you can't just stop in the middle. You have to allow the project to continue and try to manage and mitigate whatever adverse impact appears to be occurring. But if that is the case, then it will be irresponsible almost to then go ahead and authorize more mining when in fact the benefits of the current project appear to be uncertain. So we will naturally hesitate, and we will have to debate it for some time as a nation as to what is the correct option, because there are no easy answers there.
Your Excellency, we have to go on a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk more about the situation, about hesitating between having agricultural land or extracting minerals from under it. I'll be back with you shortly.